Welcome to the second webinar in the Drute Independence series. Today, Simon McCormack is going to continue to delve into some more of the capabilities of the Drute software platform and how that can help you to move to open source solutions.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everybody. This is Simon McCormack here. This is the second in our series of Drute Independence webinar solutions. The first one, you recall, you may want to go and look at it if you haven't seen it. We basically created a NFS data store in Ceph, and we exposed that NFS data store to our ESXi vCenter environment so that we could start to migrate VMs. In this session, I'm going to migrate some VMs to that data store. I'm going to create some new VMs as well. I'm going to run a couple of things in parallel so we can do it and it makes it interesting. I pre-recorded some of this so that you can see it in real time because we can speed up some of the slower elements of what's happening. And without further ado, I'm going to switch over to the demo. I'm going to start off in ESXi, looking at a bunch of virtual machines. Go to vSphere and have a look at it. It's actually a better view in vSphere. So we go to the VM view. So demo test 1. See data stores. He's on the Simon FS data store. He's running demo test 3. So we can migrate these guys now. So I can take demo test 1. Action. This operation has to be done in vSphere if you want to migrate it. You can do it in ESXi. It's a little more complicated. You can copy the data stores around manually. So if you're in an environment where you've just got an ESXi server and you want to transition it, you can do it alone without vCenter. Although I don't see any reason why you wouldn't just deploy that vCenter trial and do that. But I'll do it in vCenter here, migrate it. Now you can do compute and storage only. I want to do storage today. I'm going to do the compute in a future session. Okay, storage only. So I've got all my data stores, my new data stores here. And next, finish, and it'll start to provision it. See, it starts to move. It's copying all the data. The length of time this is going to take depends on the size of the data store and the bandwidth you have in your network. This is a live migration. The ESXi models that I've looked at, they want you to shut down the machine to copy the data store. Because vSphere is handling it, we can do it live. So this is your first step in really getting this independence. Now I've got it away from the local data store on local disks on that machine, get it into a central open source data store that I can now transition easier your machine somewhere else. I can do some more things here. This takes a little while, so I'm not going to sit here and watch this. I'll do some other tasks. I'll wait. I want to deploy a machine. So on my cluster, action, new virtual machine. So create a new virtual machine. It's our new VM. Imaginative names today. Or about DRS. I actually have to select it to make that work. And then choose the data source. So I can create it from scratch into that data store. I mean, as far as ESXi is concerned, these are all valid data sources. This is data store 1, it's the local disk in this server. This big 1.3 terabyte is that Ceph data store. Obviously, these are the shared disks inside that Ceph environment. I can just create a new machine onto the new file system immediately. This is interesting because we can show what we can do with the DSP software. Linux. Doesn't actually matter, I think, what you put here. You could say anything because it's not going to load the OS for you. It's just for VMware guest services. So it knows what OS they are. I'm not going to make it very big. Give it a couple of gig, a couple of CPUs, 50 gig drive. The VLAN is already set. That's the VLAN I set up in my environment. I don't need to change any of the other parameters. And we can finish, and it'll create a new VM for us. This VM, it's been created. It doesn't actually do anything with it until you go along and push it. It hasn't actually created it yet. And we've got to power it on ourselves. Yeah, it's created it now. So that power on was grayed out for a second there as it created it. Power it on. So it's going to come up. It doesn't have an operating system. Now you can go through the vSphere, ESXi, and vSphere tools to try and deploy an OS, but we're going to do it with our DSP software. So this is based on some software, open source software that we've added to it. This is one I did earlier that's sitting in the ready state. So this one that's sitting in the ready state, basically earlier on, I created a VM and I went through what is a commissioning process of this machine so that the Metal as a Service product here can understand this system and control it and boot it. And so that I can basically capture it and deploy an OS, and we'll pixie boot to deploy the OS onto the machine. This new machine I just created is, as it boots up, it will be discovered by the mass product, which will then do the deployment. We can start off with this one. I'll do this in reverse order because, booting new machines, deploying OSs takes a while. So if I have it in this state where I'm doing things in parallel, I can make it a bit more interesting. We don't have to have too much of a time lag. So this guy, he's already been commissioned. I'll do the commissioning in a moment. I'm going to deploy him. So you see a lot of options here about operating system. So these are the operating systems I've loaded into the software. So I'll do Ubuntu, just keep the defaults. And then I could do a cloud init script where I can put in, the default passwords and stuff like that. I'm not going to touch that for now on this one. I'll just start the deployment for this machine, but it's going to basically take that machine and deploy Ubuntu onto it. So it's a nice way to be able to control deployment of the different machines. And then in a moment, I'll show you what's going on with that new machine we just created. When he pops up into the view, go and have a quick look at him. vSphere, look at the tasks. It's complaining about these errors. It complaining can't power it on because it's already powered on because I hit power on like 5 times. So he's actually powering on. If I was patient, I wouldn't have done that. See, he's actually booting up. So he's actually been through a cloud init himself procedure and should have been captured by the Metal as a Service product. And you'll see here he is. This is a default name that it gives to it. It doesn't know the name. It captured the boot, pixie booted it into an OS and doesn't know the name of it. But now I can give it the name. And go into it and say, this is our new, I can't even remember what I called it actually. New VM, right? Okay, very imaginative name. New VM, say that. So we know that's our new VM machine. So it's a VM that's been deployed into the system. It doesn't know how to power it because it doesn't really know what it is at this point. We can help it, a one-time configuration, give it the power options so it can control it. So I can edit the power options, telling me it's VM. So most of this you can automate. I'm just going to, for demonstration purposes, show what it is. It's my, do you know the VM name? Yes, new VM. The IP. This is one of the interesting things, like VMware IP. What is it referring to? Actually, it's referring to either or ESXi or vCenter. You can do both here. So 530201 is my vCenter actually, but you could put the ESXi there. And all happy. So see, that's my administrator at Droot.io. and it's remembered my password. That's very convenient, so I don't have to type that in at HTTPS unverified to let it work. So it can basically power this VM, so we can control the powering of it up and down. So I go back to take action. And this guy, I want to commission him. So it goes through initial start commissioning. This is like it's a bare metal server, but it's obviously not. It's just a VM in this case, but it's the same function. So you can take everything, VMs, bare metal servers, the whole thing, and act like they're all the same. So let's start commissioning this guy. So I'll go back to my hardware machine view. It's not exactly hardware. So if you look at tags, you see the VMs have all been tagged virtual. It knows all my VM machines. So you can actually, using the tag system, you can see the things that are, VMs versus bare metal. So we're deploying my demo test 3 machine, putting the OS on it right now. It says it's installing the OS, and we're commissioning my new VM. It's loading all of the tools that it needs to be able to manage that machine. So while we wait for them to proceed, we can actually go back to vSphere and have a look at the migration status of that machine. Yeah, it's on 54% relocating now. It takes a little while because it's a fair amount of disk that it needs to transmit. And these are just background tasks that we let it go. And now it's moved to the testing setup, and it says it's in ready. So it's actually moved it from that commissioning state to a ready state. You see the transitional states of the different machines within the DSP software as they go through the different areas. So one thing I didn't show, so for this one, right, it's a machine that's ready to deploy the OS. So I click on it and go into it. It knows what it is now, has learned about it, and can control it. But also I've got a lot of other options I can do. I can do the network configuration. I can add interfaces. I can add VLANs. I could do DHCP configuration. So I can do a complete setup for a set of machines that I can control in my environment. And this machine, again, if I go back to my machines list, this one's deploying the OS. This is in the state where it's ready to deploy an OS as well. I don't need to do that again for this one. But let's go back to vSphere and see where vSphere has got. So it's got 58% in the relocation. We'll go back to here and we'll deploy this machine. So deployment, we'll put CentOS 7 on this one. Start deployment. So now it's completely controlling booting up and down OS deployment, and when they're finished, you get a machine. In fact, if I go to my VMs, 6 machines, go to one of the ones I did earlier. So for example, demo test 2, go to this machine. It's a fully deployed machine. So I go back to vSphere, demo test 2, go to it. It's basically an Ubuntu machine. It's ready and it's put me on the prompt. So I have a demo test 2 machine, just a basic Ubuntu build that I can log into. So did I remember the password? Yes, I did. And it's on the network. I can ping google.com. Yeah. If we go back to vSphere, you see we're at 62% now. And here it had a little burst, moved forward a few percentage. And now we've seen that it's actually finished the migration. So now if I look at my new VM, so demo test 1, I migrated, right? Demo test run, data store. It's now on the new file system. I go on to demo test 1, summary, go into the file system, look at it. So what's it got? If I do this, I did this before. You see there's a 50 gig big file that I already have created on it. And vi simon.text. Basically, there's a we're active on the new file system. The advantage of the migration with VMware, you can do it live, and you can actually be using it at the time that it's live and going on. So the file system is there. So it's pretty, nice and easy to bring in new data stores into vSphere and basically migrate all the machines into the data store. And now you've got all the advantages of Ceph, the redundancy and reliability. And that's probably the most critical step to providing independence for these machines. So we've got their storage relocated. The compute setup is a different story. It's very varied. So that's what we'll tackle in another session where we'll look to move some of these workloads out of VMware completely into an OpenStack environment. Then ultimately, we want to be able to show that we can move them into the cloud and out of the cloud. Things like that. Thanks very much for watching.